Welcome to my Commodore 64 Games memories. This is where I look at old games and some of the technical details behind them. Let's get into it. Today we have Born in Space demo, which was, I think, being developed around about 1994. The Excellent Games That Weren't website has a demo version of this, and it is self-playing. And I wanted to have a look at this because it's got some very interesting scrolling bitmap usage actually in a game context rather than the demo. So yes, if you like these kind of technical deep dive videos, then please do consider liking or subscribing to this channel or sending me a super thanks. They are all always very much appreciated. Now the preview demo is also self-playing, as the Games That Weren't website indicates, but I'm also going to have a look at how to get this so you can actually play the level yourself rather than relying on the self-playing demo mode. Let's get this running so you can just see what it looks like. I'm going to use the standard Vice for this. I just wanted to check what's the difference between the two D64 files as well in that archive. I think both versions are the self-playing version. But anyway, this is in standard Vice. I've got C64 debug GUI open in the background there, but this standard version of Vice, what's it doing? It's staying on a black screen. There we go. So we have, I walked past the load, but basically we have this nice little bouncing multi-directional scrolling screen with what looks like some sprites overlaid on top of it. We have this oh, that's a nice little intermission loading screen. Look, the drive loading indicator in Vice is showing green there in the bottom right hand corner. So here we go. Doesn't it look nice already? So this is self-playing. I'm not actually doing anything on the joystick at all. But yeah, we can immediately see that there's quite a lot of unused open space up at the top of the screen. Let's just double check the other D64 file. It looks like this one starts differently. Okay, yeah, using the D64 editor, I can see immediately that it looks like it's got a few different versions of different pieces of software on there. And yeah, we've got a boot menu. Let's choose option number 2 because it's Born in Space. So looks like a demo disk or a cracked disk or something like that. The previous Born in Space D64 file that I ran just now went straight into the game, attract mode, title screen, etc, etc. We can see it's still loading data even in this version. A rather nice, colourful intermission screen. It looks like it's bitmap, doesn't it? Makes sense because the game also looks like it's using bitmap. You can tell because it's quite colourful and varied. So yeah, it looks like it's very similar. But what we do is that we'll use the version which looks like a preview version, right? Developed by the actual developers themselves. So let's start debugging this a little bit more properly in C64 debug GUI. I think actually just before we open it in C64 debug GUI, let's use my updated C1541 tool to see if there's any extra hidden information on the disk image. I don't think there will be, but we can try, right? So just looking for the relevant kind of like command line there from previous usages of previous debugging sessions actually, and you can have a look at that. So Buggy Boy was looking to recover hidden files on its disk image. So we'll just put the correct file in for the disk image. I also need to make sure that any previous recovered files are actually deleted. There we go. So let's run this command line to see if we get any extra hidden files on the disk. Because it's a preview version, right? If it's a preview version, but there's extra level data or anything else hanging around on the disk, then I want to find it to see if it can also be restored. So look at that. There's only track 18 sector 0, and that's not probably not, almost certainly not going to be interesting. It's just the block allocation map at the beginning and then the directory after it. So yeah, nothing interesting extra, at least on that examination. The recover command in this updated version of C1541, which I provide the source code to, basically looks for block chains which do not appear in the directory listing and then saves them out as individual files so that we can have a look at them in the hex editor or do whatever it is that we want. Anyway, so let's run this preview version now in C64 Debug GUI, and then we can have a little bit more of a proper look at how the game scrolling works, and just to really verify and double check that it is actually using a bitmap where I'm expecting it that it's using a bitmap. So there's, you know, quite a lot of data loaded with a black screen. Okay, it's a preview version, fine, no problem. So this multi-directional bouncing little scroll here with what looks like sprites overlaid on top of it for the text. It's quite nice, isn't it? But if we have a look at it in the screen debugger here, yes, we can see the red outlines showing very clearly that it's using white, probably high resolution sprites. If we scroll up and down with the raster targeting cursor here, we can see that it's actually not really doing anything apart from it's just scrolling a multicolor text screen. It's not even a bitmap in this stage anyway. Didn't think it was a bitmap. It's just multicolor text screen, and it is actually scrolling the screen around, and it's kind of like between these. It's in widescreen mode. It looks like it's in, you know, effectively in widescreen mode by bringing the top and bottom effective borders in, probably just to give it a nice framing. There's a little Trax logo in the bottom. I think that's Trax logo in the bottom right hand corner, flashing in and out. A nice little intro bouncing screen. Anyway, let's see if we can get onto the next part of the game, the preview anyway. So at this point it seems to be doing a lot of loading again, a lot of decompression, I think. And there we go. So okay, so the title screen, oh, that's surprising, isn't it? The black background is bitmap, multicolor bitmap. We've got sprites overlaid on top of the black bitmap to form the logo. While loading this, there we go, it's definitely a bitmap screen, multicolor bitmap screen. There seems to be, that's interesting. If you notice here, look, the bitmap screen in the debug view is at a different Y position than the bitmap screen in the apparent rendered C64 view. And it's the same, look at this. Well, if you see my previous videos on HSP DMA delay and line crunch, you can almost immediately see how the horizontal and the vertical scroll is being used because the bitmap data is not scrolling. We're only getting a line being rendered in a vertical column instead of the whole screen shifting. So we can immediately, and the large gap up at the top of the screen also gives a very strong hint about what's happening. But we'll just use the raster targeting cursor just to really, you know, double confirm and double check that this is happening. So basically we're going to expect to see either HSP DMA delay and then followed by a line crunch, or a line crunch first and then an HSP DMA delay. So if the screen hasn't scrolled up and down vertically very much, we're not going to see much of a line crunch, if at all. However, the horizontal screen position, the column was already kind of like 4 or 5 or 6 characters in from the left-hand side, I think it was. So we should expect to see some kind of difference in the VC base. So the VC base is already at 28. So that's 28 in hex, which is 40 in decimal. If we move the targeting cursor down and to the right, we're basically tracing the raster in slow motion. We can see on the left-hand side there the code which is executing at each of those cycle positions, actually on the screen. Don't forget that the 1 megahertz clock roughly is equivalent to 8 high-resolution pixels horizontally on the screen, basically each character horizontally. And there we go. We can see that as we progress down and the targeting cursor reaches a point where VC base is going to go from 28 to 50. And oh look, it's gone to 54. So let's trace backwards a little bit. VC base going from 50 to then 54 definitely shows that it is using an HSP or DMA delay technique. That's discussed in more detail in the previous videos in this series here. It's commonly found in the demo effect, so it's very unusual to find it actually used in a game. So then we start getting into VC base updating out of sync with 40 in decimal characters. We can see that the bad lines, well, when we switch on the bad lines, we can see where the bad lines are. If I move the targeting cursor up and down, you can see where the bitmap screen gets turned on. Now, if I unpause the game, and then let's have a look at the top of the screen where we would normally want to see the line crunch. So it looks like a line crunch because we're crunching out all of the lines, which basically makes the screen scroll up. Basically, we're telling the VIC to crunch the line. Basically, we're tricking the VIC into advancing the VC base pointer by 28 in hex or 40 in decimal for every single raster line rather than for every 8 raster lines, which is the default. So there we go. When the screen has scrolled into a certain position, there's actually quite a lot of line crunching going on. So that's how this game is able to move a bitmap screen up and down and also horizontally by using the HSP DMA technique. This is interesting. You can see that actually the boss, which is coming in, is using the bitmap screen. So the bitmap screen is static, but it's moving on the Commodore 64 as the boss moves around. It's basically scrolling it without scrolling the data in the bitmap, of course. Now this is also very interesting. The stars and the star is being used for Sprite 7 there. Sprite 7 star actually contains 3 vertical stars, and as the multiplexer draws these 3 vertical stars, it then changes the horizontal position of the sprite in the middle of when the sprite's being displayed. So you can see there the 3 vertical stars are not vertical at all. They are offset horizontally as the sprite's X position is updated, and that means you can render 3 independent stars at 3 different X positions for that Y position where the sprite is being rendered, and you can basically triple up the sprite. Other games that use this were in the video series, if you have a look back, Shadow of the Beast, for example. For the clouds layer, I think there were 2 or maybe even 3 layers of the clouds, and those were horizontally split sprites. So this game back from 1994 was already using this technique, and I forget exactly when Shadow of the Beast was released, but it was also around about a similar time, wasn't it? A little bit before, I think. Actually, it was on cartridge. So it's not the only game to use this kind of effect. There are other games which use this horizontal sprite splitting effect, but I think it uses, this game demo uses that to great effect, because basically the bitmap screen disappears, the boss comes on, rendered in the bitmap screen, and then the stars probably in the background. I don't think there's any sprite priority work being done. Anyway, so the sprite-based stars kind of like cover up the fact that most of the background for the bitmap is being used for the boss rather than the background, if you like. So there we go. I'm just adding some debug notes there. And of course, I will be checking these debug notes into source control. So you can also have a look at what I'm writing in a nice, easy to use, easy to read text file. The amount of sprites actually being chucked around is quite impressive, I think, for this game. You'll notice that a little bit unusually is that sprites are actually being used for the bullets from the player character, from the player character's ship. As the player character upgrades their weapons, like in spread fire or whatever, or the super weapon fire, then it's also using a larger number of sprites, which puts some demands actually onto the multiplexer. But of course, it avoids having to render all of these effects in the bitmap screen. And then this is where the game preview demo ends, and it goes into this, please send us money and order it from here screen, which is fair enough, right? The Games That Weren't website is actually saying that they don't think that this version was commercially available, which is a shame, because if you go to the Games That Weren't website, it actually got a pretty good review. Right? I'm not surprised, because actually the graphics look great. So let's just rerun this in C64 debugger. Why is it not rerunning? Oh, because it wasn't reset properly, and it's probably, there we go. Needs to be unpaused as well. Is there anything else that was missed in this run through? I just wanted to draw attention to the fact that in this transition between the title screen and this intermission screen, actually the drive code is still loading, and the C64 obviously is still loading data as all of this as it's using quite a lot of line crunch, and yes, it's using quite a lot of line crunch. It's got quite a lot of sprites being displayed on the screen, look, and it's displaying that bitmap, but it's still loading in the background. So it was loading an awful lot of data with this quite heavy, raster based effect on the screen. So let's have a look at this in ICU 64 to see if we can spot anything else. During the game mode in ICU C64, we can see quite a lot of memory writes there going on for the bitmap scroll, those yellow memory writes there in the memory debug view. So this is at the start of the game. I just want to save a snapshot at the beginning of the gameplay, so I can easily return to it later on. What I'm looking for in the memory debug view is that I'm looking for sequential reads in a pattern which may indicate the pre-recorded joystick inputs for the self-playing demo. That one looks instantly suspicious. It's progressing at a different speed to the background scroll. So the background scroll is at a constant speed, and those green memory reads were quite obvious, but this memory range here, what's that, D6F2 for example, was progressing at a different rate. So there we go. This does look a little bit like recorded joystick information. So let's load that snapshot again. So we go back to the beginning of the level, and let's put a watch load on say for example that address. Where does it hit? We'll just wait for it to scroll across and get to that point there. Come on joystick inputs. If the player's not moving around there very much or not shooting very much, then of course it's not going to hit that breakpoint, is it? Ah, there we go. Not so quick, but there we go. That's where the breakpoint hits. Let's have a look at the code that's running that accesses that memory address. Well, look, it's loading something and then storing it into an extended 0-page memory address 2E1 there. It's loading from 4E indirected Y, which means that it's just using the Y register there. But look, the Y register is okay, so let's fill this little memory range here, D600 to D700. Maybe, yeah, I think it's probably already progressed into actually not reading from that memory range, which I just filled, right? What I'm trying to do is that I'm just filling that block of memory to see how it affects the game. So, need to fill a larger... I think maybe I wasn't also in RAM mode. But anyway, let's load the snapshot, right? And then let's fill that block of memory again. Now that we know that we're in the RAM bank rather than the CPU probably being in IO mode, right? Whoops. Anyway, I want to fill the RAM underneath any of the IO space. Okay. So anyway, I don't want to hit the SID chip, for example. I don't want to hit the color RAM. Ah, there we go. Look, I filled the RAM, and the player has instantly gone or moved up to the top of the screen, and they're firing in very long pulses there. Okay, that's cool to note, right? So we know that filling this block of RAM changes the way that the self-playing demo moves around the player, which is cool and very, very useful to know. Just going to note that down in the debugging text file there. Let's fill it with a different value, perhaps. After loading the snapshot again, we'll fill it with a different value to see if we get any different behavior. Right, there we go. So let's fill it with 0. And okay, so the player is moving slightly differently this time. You'll notice that they are juddering up against the top of the screen scroll, which has a different effect to how the player was moving with the value of 2 being used to fill that memory. Okay, so if I have a look at the code again, which accesses that memory space, there we go. I think that's it, right? So it's reading a whole bunch of data all the way up there in memory. Ah, look, it's loading actually a pair of bytes by the looks of it. Look, so it's loading it from offset 1 and then offset 2. The first byte is stored in 2E1. The second byte is AFCE. AFCE looks like it is a counter value. So it looks like it's kind of like not just joystick data. It looks like it's kind of like joystick data with some run length encoding, because AFCF seems to be the routine, or rather the location. But AFCF is the routine which reads this area in memory. Sorry, AFCF is doing a deck with AFCE. Yeah, that's a counter, right? So it's a run length encoded joystick data by the looks of it. Interesting, very cool. Other games would use a similar encoding method for their self-playing demo mode. I think, was it Hunter's Moon? Hunter's Moon, I seem to remember the Hunter's Moon demo, I definitely made that self-playing. I think I did a video on that too. Have a look back through my channel for Hunter's Moon, and that's the self-playing demo. Very similar methodology. Look in the memory view for, advancing linear reads, and then make it read joystick instead of, linearly reading that memory. I think that's what we can do here with this routine. So 8FCF, we can circumvent the routine at 8FCF and actually make it just read the joystick, I think, right? I think we'll do that. So 2E1 seems to be the joystick bit, I reckon, looking at this. Because 2E1, if you have a look at 8FF0 there in the code, load accumulate with 2E1, and it with 1 branch not equal. And then just underneath it at 900E, there's a load accumulated with 2E1 again, but and it with 2 and branch not equal. It looks like it's testing individual bits from 2E1, and that gives me a strong indication that this routine is handling joystick bits. It's restoring the processor port there at 8FEC. It's loading accumulator with immediate value $35 and then storing it in $1, which is the processor port store. So because it's having to read what looks like run length encoded joystick data for the pre-recorded play from underneath the I/O, it needs to switch out the I/O while it's doing that, you see, and then switch it back in again so that the multiplexer can update the I/O registers in the VIC chip and also play the SID chip is also in that I/O space area, and also the CIA interrupt control registers and all of those kind of stuff, or the timers. All of those need to get updated. So anyway, let's circumvent this routine by restoring the processor port beforehand and then loading from the joystick port, storing it into 2E1. Let's fill the remaining part of that run length encoded routine or decoding routine. Let's fill it with no ops. So we want to fill the code that we want to remove. We need to do that carefully so that we don't destroy the rest of the joystick routine. So there we go. We can see now that the disassembly represents those changes now. So let's make sure that those changes are backed up. Now let's make sure that the code still runs. So let's put a breakpoint. Let's delete the breakpoint. Actually, let's see. Well, there we go. Look at the joystick input. I'm controlling this now with keyboard. You can verify that by looking at the joystick input in the Vice window in the bottom right hand corner there. So I'm controlling now the self-playing demo. So yeah, that's quite cool. Because this preview version was, practically the only version that's on the Games That Weren't website, I don't think, unless the playable version has leaked out, I don't think many people have played this particular part of this game, unless they've decided to do, a very similar part of trying to remove the self-playing demo. And of course, I'm not very good at the game, obviously, because I've already died before the boss has had time to come on the screen. But that's interesting, isn't it? If I die faster, the please buy this game screen comes up earlier. So dying earlier causes that screen to come up earlier. So let's go back to the snapshot again. Now the snapshots, because I've loaded the snapshot, the snapshot has restored obviously the self-playing demo mode, or the pre-recorded demo mode rather than me being able to play it, because that code has been restored in memory, right? So let's put a breakpoint at F8FCF and advance to it. Okay, there we go. Oops. Yeah, the disassembly view disappears because it thinks that the previous byte is an instruction when it's not. Okay, so let's see if there might be a better way of implementing this player control hack to remove the pre-recorded code. So let's have a look at what, oh, there we go. We've got a whole bunch of code here where it's loading from 2E1. I basically hunted from the beginning to the end of memory there for ADE102, which is the opcode sequence for load accumulator with 2E1 there, which is what the joystick routine does. Just going through the code here to see what all of these do. Yeah, look, see, it's looking for fire there at 9189. I think that's it. So that's interesting. The joystick has up, down, left and right and fire, which is 5 things, but there's 6 things doing that. Look, it's doing a load and then a store. I think 8F, oh, that's funny there. Look, the code is doing a load accumulator with 2E1 and then storing accumulator 2E1. I think 8F9A is going to be a better place to actually read the joystick bits from the hardware, basically from the correct, from the correct hardware register, and then store it into 2E1 there, and then remove the rest of the run length encoded joystick bits decoder, right? So let's put that little note down in the debugging text file there, so that we don't forget what we're going to do. So I want to change the load accumulator 2E1 to be load accumulator, what is it, DC00, right? Which DC00 is the joystick. It's then jumping look to 8FCF just after switching out the switching out the I/O by using the 0-page processor port, right? So yeah, and then it restores the I/O space with the processor port, and then begins decoding the joystick. So yeah, I think that's what we're going to do, is that we're going to remove the RLE pre-recorded input decoding by doing that. Let's just load the snapshot so we have a nice piece of clean memory that we know where we're going to be going, and then redo those changes again. So let's disassemble, what was that routine again? Yeah, 8F9A, so let's disassemble that. Let's choose a really good point. So let's put the DC00 address there. We'll put a breakpoint at F9A actually, and then we'll advance the breakpoint. So we know that we're at the beginning of the routine. So we'll put the joystick in there. We will then, just double checking the value that I want to put in there for the jump, AFF0. I think actually that we should knock out the store into the processor port, so that we remove the processor port store, so that actually the I/O remains mapped in, because changing the jump to 8FF0 is just at the beginning of where it processes the joystick bits. Okay, so we're hopping over, we are ignoring the restoration of the the processor port in 0-page there, so that we actually want to make sure that the I/O and all of the other parts of the memory are correctly mapped in, you see. So maybe actually what we can do is that we'll just jump in a little bit earlier to ensure that, because the game is expecting to map out the I/O and map in the RAM underneath it, right? At this particular point, I'm just trying to reduce the number of bytes that need to get changed in the memory. Yeah, we can hop back to that place there. That means that we don't need those no ops anymore. Basically, we're maintaining the code for the game to map out the I/O and map in the RAM, and then map out the RAM and then map in the I/O again, right? We're just altering a smaller number of bytes. So we're altering the bytes for the joystick address. We're then altering the 2 bytes for the address to actually run jump to. So there we go. That's a more minimal change actually to make the game playable, as opposed to the self-playing recorded demo. Right, now you can actually play this game yourself. You can download the preview version from the Excellent Games That Weren't website. I'm really very thankful to Frank for making the Games That Weren't website and archiving all of these old games. It really is a treasure trove of wonderful old unreleased or barely released software. Let's save that snapshot now as the snapshot at the beginning of the level, but with playability, playable game wise now, so we can play the level from the beginning as much as we like. However, I'm not very good at playing this game. Let's see if we can find out where the ships count is, shall we? I just died immediately at the beginning. That's infuriating. Let's go back to the beginning of the level. Let's make those two, basically they're pokes, right? You can turn them in, you know, you're basically putting bytes into memory. If you have a freezer cartridge, you can do the same thing. You don't need to do it in Vice, Monitor, Debugger. You can use the freezer cartridge screen to say, I want to poke these values into this memory address, and then continue on as well. You could even put those values into memory before the game starts, I think, and then freeze it. You could do that too. Anyway, let's see if I can find out where the player lives are stored. So that now we can play it. We're going to look for equal to 3. How do I need? Oh, I need to do new first. There we go. And then equal to 3. And yeah, I had already died. Let's do a new. Okay, equal to 3. And then die equal to 2 decrement. There we go. It's these two values which change. And I think the second one is not right because it's flickering around between various different values. Let's look for the next decremented value. Oh, there we go. That was really easy. So ICU64 makes that really easy, right? The memory scan window is seldom used, but it's actually really useful. It let me find what looks like the lives counter extremely quickly. In the old days, it would have been incredibly difficult. There we go. I've set the lives to be FF. The ships counter in the top right hand corner is getting very confused. Look. It really doesn't know how to update that number for FF or 255 number of ships. But now, there we go. I can safely play this demo now and not worry about dying because I've got basically infinite lives, or as near as infinite as you're going to get. There we go. Lovely attack patterns. Lovely, very busy number of sprites on the screen. Look. And we can see how busy this game gets. There are some pickups here which disappear. Not a surprise. We can see that the bitmap is getting cleared in the debug view, and then the boss comes on. Interesting to note actually that the boss, had those some overlaid sprites as well. But don't forget that the stars in the background are sprites. The sprite, there we go, I'm trying to destroy each part of the boss. There we go, the super weapon seems to be more effective with that. And now I've destroyed the boss, end of level boss, whatever it is, myself now with the playable preview demo. Entering inner space. Now I have lots and lots of lives. I think this kind of like entering inner space intermission screen is then going to go to the, yeah, look, it's gone straight. So yeah, it wasn't getting to this screen because the player ran out of lives. It just got to that screen because the game was, force jumping to this. But we also see this screen if you die. So that's why I wanted the, lives poke, if you like, for making this game a little bit more playable by making it a lot easier. I just noticed that when I scroll down to the bottom of the screen, we can start seeing in the bitmap data there, that looks like sprite pointer registers being updated in the color screen. Oh, the screen, which is the color data for the bitmap. Those are the sprite index pointers. So that would have been a little bug that needed to get figured out and fixed before this game actually got to be finally released, was to figure out that. So I think we'll leave this video there. I covered the main points that I wanted to cover in this preview demo game that I found on Games That Weren't, and how it very interestingly makes use of a couple of demo effects actually in a game context. So thank you very much for watching these retro games memories videos. If you like these kind of videos or appreciate what I do, then please do consider liking or subscribing to this channel, and a super thanks or a membership is very much appreciated. Take care, have a great day, evening or night, wherever you are.